You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 275, How to Release Mom Guilt After a Breakup or Divorce with Laura Conley. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, hello, beautiful brave hearts. How are you doing? I am so excited to have you here today. I have a special guest, my friend Laura. I love her to death. She is a coach colleague. Well, she started out as a coach colleague. Now she's my friend, and she will be my future coach when I am losing mom weight, which I'm so excited for. So I can't wait to work with you, Laura. It's going to be a blast. Now, Laura is very eccentric, like love her to death. She's colorful, she's playful, she's so bright. Like if I had to give you a color, I'd say like hot pink and yellow and orange. Like there's not one color that I can give her. She's just so much fun to hang out with. And I recently was on a retreat that she hosted back in, I think it was February. And it was like a big slumber party in this beautiful, like California mansion. And the vibe of Laura is just something that you don't get everywhere. So I'm very excited to have her on the podcast today for all of my brave hearts to meet you and to have you in our world. So thank you so much, Laura, for coming on.
Oh my God, I'm totally blushing. That was the best intro. That is so fun. Thank you for all those kind words. I love you, Dorothy.
Of
I am
course, Boo. I love you. Tell us who you are, where you are, and what you do. Share all of that with us.
okay. So who I am, is that the first one? Who?
Yeah, who? Who are you?
Who? Well, I'm Laura Conley. I live right outside of Boulder, Colorado with my kids, Luna, who is 7, and Phoenix, who is 4, and Brian, who is my husband, who's 42. And
Can we
I
also
run
just pause? The name of your children also just like say a lot about you, like, and why we get along. Like, I love
totally.
aliens, and you've got a Luna and a Phoenix. Like, it's just my favorite. This is her
No,
personality in a nutshell. I love it. Okay, keep going.
totally. My parents are like, you can't name your children that. Like we are from New England. Like we name our children like Matthew. And I'm like, no, we don't. Now we live in Colorado. We can name our kids whatever we want. Um, anyways, so yeah, and I am a life and weight loss coach. I am the founder of the Yummy Mummy Method. So I help moms lose weight for the last time, moms and women lose weight for the last time. And that was born from my personal struggle with yo-yo dieting and food shame and body drama and all the things. So when I had my daughter 7 years ago, I I went on a mission to heal my relationship with my body and food because I didn't want to pass it down to her. And I sort of had this like wake up call and I had to do it. This was this thing that I had accepted defeat around and just thought this will just always be my struggle. And Laura, like, it's not that big of a deal. Like other people have way worse struggles. Like, who cares? Big deal. And then I was like, no, this is painful. And I don't want Luna to, and now Phoenix too, because I think, there's a whole thing with men as well, but and boys, but I really did not want her to inherit a crap relationship with food and body. So went on this mission to solve the unsolvable. And I am here today to say that there is an answer. And what a beautiful gift she has been in really like really offering me a calling, really offering like she's kind of like almost like my muse or my inspiration. So yeah, so that's what I do. And then what else am I supposed to say?
Yeah, I wanted to know who you are, where you are, and what you do. So that was great. That was a
Oh,
great
okay.
intro.
I did a good
I
job.
also, yeah, you did an amazing job. I also love your Yum Mom Minutes. So Laura will share on Instagram like the Yummy Mummy Minute or something. What is it called? What do you call it?
Yeah, the it depends what mood I'm in. The yum mum min or the yummy mummy minute or a
I
blend of
love
both.
it. It's literally my favorite. I'm not even working on like weight loss right now, and I still like watch all of your videos that have to do
Oh
with
my
that
God.
because there's such fun concepts.
Oh my God, I love you. That's gonna make me do more. Okay. I'll keep them
Okay.
coming.
So I want to know, I mean, I don't actually know this about you, so I don't think we've ever spoken about this, which is so crazy. It's so funny when I like hang out with my coach friends, we don't really talk about breakups very much, even though we're talking about business.
Mm,
And then when I have my coach friends on the podcast or something like that, I'm like, wait a second, I don't actually even know. Have you been in a breakup? Have you gone through heartbreak? Like, tell me if you've ever
yes.
gone through that. And if so, like, what was your experience?
Oh God, how do I edit this down? Jeez. Um, yeah, so I have gone through breakups before. I think the most painful breakup was with my now husband.
That's so
So
good. I love this. Tell us the story. Can you
yeah.
tell us? I mean, do you feel
Oh,
comfortable?
oh my God. Well, you know me. I mean, I will tell you guys anything. My poor husband. But he doesn't care either. He's an open book. But so I met my husband when I was 18 in college, and I like knew the day I met him that I was going to marry him. Like I just knew, like he is my soulmate. Um, but I'm really trying to make a long story short. But when I was graduating college, so we were together like my entire college career. He was a year older than me, so most of his college career too. When I was graduating college, I started to like have this itch or this pull to like sow my wild oats, kind of, so to speak. Like that sounds so cheesy. And I used to like roll my eyes at people that were like, "Oh, like I have to sow my wild oats," or like I need to like get it out of my system. And I would be like, "Oh, that's not for me. I don't need to do that." And then ironically, I did. I really needed to kind of like have my wild and crazy phase. And I mean, this is so embarrassing to admit. Like, this is not a proud moment, but I moved out to LA for Brian. Brian went to USC. My now husband went to USC for grad school. So that was like the plan. He was graduating a year before me. I was gonna like follow him essentially out there. We were gonna like start our lives together in LA. But I got there and I was like not into him and he could feel it. And he broke up with me and he was so pissed at me. He was like, "You're making me do your dirty work, like F you, basically." And I was like, "Oh shit, he's right." Like that, yeah. I'm not, that's not pretty like that. I'm not proud of that. And so we broke up. But we had the same cell phone package. So I had to write him a check. Like there was no I'm like really aging myself right now. But there was no like Venmo. So I had to like somehow like see him or mail him a check like once a month because we were on the same cell phone plan or whatever. But we were like not speaking. I was doing my thing, going wild in LA, and it was great. And like come 3 months, I'm like, oh, oh no, I saw Brian's MySpace profile because this one was MySpace was getting popular. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so in love with him because it like had all like, his like profile or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so totally in love with him. And even when we broke up, I was like, I'm still marrying him. He is still my person, but I can't marry him yet. And so I saw his MySpace profile and I was like, ah. And so I went and tried to get him back and he would not take me back. And he was like, "I hate you. Like you broke my heart." Like, and he was like, "And I can't believe you called me like today. I was like one day away from being fully over you." Anyways, so long story short, I like beg him. I am like groveling. I am like on my knees. I'm doing all the things. It took me like a year. It took me like a year to get him back. And I finally did. But we had to go through some stuff because he didn't trust me at this point, right? Because he was like, "Well, what if she does this again?" So what's kind of cool about our relationship is like in our 20s, we did a lot of we actually didn't ever go to couples therapy, but we read a lot of books together on relationship. Like we sort of grew up together and we sort of like built a foundation from there on out. So that is the long story short, believe it or not. But it was really my painful part was getting him back and not being able to get him back. And he was always like in college, like, "I want to marry you." Like we like really like we were like, yes, we're soulmates. It was like very reciprocal. He wanted to marry me. I wanted to marry him. Like we knew we were soulmates. And then when I was working to get him back together with me, he would never say things like that. He was never like, he would really not even say, "I love you." Like he would not say we're soulmates. He would not say that he wanted to marry me. He would not like, so he's only like 95% there. So that was like the painful part of the breakup for me is that he had all this mistrust. and I had to really earn it back, and that sucked. But we got there. We got there, and he was willing, and I was willing, and yeah.
I
So,
love that story so much. And I got to hang out with Laura in Florida with her family. She came to Florida and it was like kind of close by. And so I was like, I'm coming to hang out with you. And I
who are these people that that are?
and it was great. Her two kids and her husband are absolutely amazing. I loved them so much. And your
Oh,
dynamic
so
with your
sweet.
husband is so great.
Mm,
Um, And honestly, I feel like that story reminds me a lot of like the situation that I went through last year of like working to get things back to normal with Jake, who then
hmm
became my husband, of like when because and I don't know how much I've shared this on the podcast. I've shared bits and pieces, but it's like I postponed our elopement, which then he interpreted as me breaking up with him, which was not what I meant. I didn't mean to break up with him or call off our engagement or anything. But then learning how to like, he had a hard time, just like you were mentioned, gaining back trust. And I remember the whole year of like really rebuilding the trust in salt, like the solid foundation around that. And it's hard to do that when you're also not getting like the full all in vibes that you got the first time around in the
mm,
situation. And because he
hmm
was very reserved of like,
mm.
I don't know if I want this anymore because I think
Yeah,
like I thought you wanted this and now you're not all in.
yeah,
So I don't know if I'm all in and like
yes.
relearning that. It's like a really interesting dynamic and something to go through, but I'm like really glad we did because now I'm like double down. We're both in it.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I feel too. And that's why I feel like our relationship is pretty easy most of the time, is because we put in so much like brunt work or grunt work. I don't know what the word is, brunt or grunt. We put in hard work at the beginning. And I feel like we get to reap those rewards. And yes, we still have a lot of, we still fight, like we still have hard things, but like it taught us to prioritize our relationship and to not put it on the back burner. So like we're
Yes.
pretty diligent now because of that, in terms of just like
Yeah.
we're checking in all the time. We like go on weekly date nights, all that stuff.
I
So
love
yeah.
that. So good. Okay. So let's talk about heartbreak. So a lot of my listeners are moms. And they also struggle with what I would term as mom guilt. Maybe you don't, I
Mm,
don't know, but I want to talk a little about the guilt around they have, a hard time investing in themselves, whether that's like, I mean, there's the obvious one of like money, investing in themselves, money, time, energy, effort.
mm-hmm.
Um, and but what's really important is like getting over your ex, building your bigger and better life after going through a breakup or a divorce. It's all really, really important. So what's the advice that you have around moms who have mom guilt in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like taking care of themselves post breakup/divorce?
Yeah, well, let's just talk about mom guilt for a second.
Okay.
If you're okay with that.
Yeah, do it. I'm ready for it.
And then we can talk about like advice, but this kind of is advice E. So I really think that there's, and you might talk about this too. I really think that there's two types of guilt,
Okay.
and I think one type of guilt is true guilt, real guilt, and I actually like that guilt because it points us back to our values. So, like for example, if I scream and yell at Luna and I feel guilty, that's actually kind of helpful for me because it's like showing me that, oh, that's like not the mom that I want to be. Like, that's actually like a check engine light of like, I want to work on this. I want to heal this. I want to improve this. This is not who I want to be. So that true guilt, that real guilt can be really helpful. Mom guilt is typically false guilt. And false guilt is like this guilt that our culture puts on us that we sort of inherit without actually accepting it on purpose. Like we accidentally take on this whole host of mom guilt without being a part of the conversation in the first place. So, mom guilt could come up like for me, it comes up like, well, just this past weekend, I was away with a group of girls. And oh my God, the mom guilt was deep. Like I had a little bit of it. I actually didn't really have any of it now, if I'm being honest, because we do this work, Dorothy, like we're in it. But like every other mom that I was there with had a lot of mom guilt. And I kept being like, do you guys think your husbands would have this sort of guilt like if they were on like a boys trip? And it was just funny, right? Like, no, they wouldn't because culture doesn't put that on them. And so it's like first, if you feel the sense of guilt, I think the best advice is to ask yourself, okay, like whose guilt is this? Like, is this something that I've gotten from cultural conditioning, or is this something that's pointing me back to my values? And so, for example, like if you go on a girls' trip, or it used to come up for me when I first had Luna and I wanted to like work out or go on a mom's night out or whatever, little things like that. And what I would say with that too is like, even if you're able to label it as cultural guilt, as false guilt, you'll probably still have some of the vibration of guilt in your body. But it's such a huge step to identify, like, okay, I'm feeling guilt. Like, this is normal. This is okay. And this is false guilt. This isn't my guilt. And so I almost like hand on heart, like, it's like I take the guilt and I hand it back. Like this is actually not mine. This is our cultures. This is like societal norms. This is the programming I've gotten and it's not actually what I want to choose because and I think it can help when you remember like why you're doing the thing that you're doing. Like for example, working out. I am a bitch if I don't work out. Like you do not want to be around me. Brian's like, I feel like you like maybe need to like go get on the Peloton. I'm like, F you, and you're totally right, and I love you. Because if I don't move my body, I'm like just super mean. And so I have to work out. And so I would feel the guilt for going and working out, but it makes me a way better mom if I work out. And same with like the girls' trips. I know the weekend, that's a big ass, right? But like the girls' trips or the mom's night out or whatever it is, like most likely that's you filling your cup. I know it's so cliche, but like you can't put your children's mask on, like, right? And you can't put their oxygen mask on until you put yours on. And I saw this past weekend. I'm like, thank God you guys felt the guilt and did it anyways, because your family needs you filled up because everyone was crying happy tears. Like, I'm getting the chills talking about it. Like, yesterday morning when we were all leaving, like, everyone was like, my cup is overflowing because this group of girls has been together for 20 years. So, like, they were like, you guys are family. I didn't even know how badly I needed it. So the advice with that is like feel the guilt and do the thing anyways because you'll be better for it and your kids and your new partner whatever and you deserve somebody that has a full cup.
Yeah, so good. It reminds me, there's like 2 points there. There's like the point of, I just can't imagine not prioritizing calming my nervous system and
Mm,
then trying to be able to serve a child. This is
yeah.
before I go on maternity leave, everyone who's listening to this podcast. It comes out at the end of January. So I'll have a baby by that point, but I don't have a kid right now. And so I just think about like, something that is so integral or important to me is emotional clearing and processing. And that is like that does take me blocking out some time and space in my calendar and in my physical world to be able to do that,
Yeah.
alone. And I keep wondering, like, am I going to feel guilty setting that time aside and trying to do that while my husband or somebody else is taking care of my child? But I'm like, how can we do anything without or how can we do anything with a dysregulated nervous system? Like, it's
Yeah.
practically impossible. And then
You're going to
second,
be, and you're going to become the thermostat of your household, right? Like your baby's going to co-regulate with you. So I do believe as moms, it's like not only our right, but our responsibility to have a regulated nervous system. And it's like, I would also say to your point, like, or to answer your question, you're like, am I going to feel guilty if I'm like going over here to regulate my nervous system and someone else is taking care of my baby? And the answer is probably yes. And it's like, so that's a piece of advice for anyone listening. It's like, yeah, you probably are going to feel guilty. And the work is to do it anyways. And eventually, the more you practice, the less guilty that you'll feel because you'll notice that everyone's better for it. You'll like have the proof.
so good. Yes. That's amazing because I think that's like the step one for anyone who's going through a breakup or divorce. Like you've got like they have to do the body work to regulate their nervous system because I don't know if you felt this probably in your breakup when, the one we were talking about where it's like in the very beginning a lot of us feel like, oh my gosh, it feels like your whole world's crashing down. Everything you thought you knew, you don't know.
Mm,
And it's a very like high intensity emotional experience at first. And sometimes that grief and that loss and that sadness and that devastation can be completely debilitating. And
mm,
so we can't really do thought work, mindset work until we've calmed the nervous system enough to be able to do that. But the barrier that I'm seeing for individuals who have small kids or who have kids in general, that they're thinking so much about their children, which of course makes total sense, that they're not able to like give themselves the time or the space to
mm.
even calm their nervous system or make it a priority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, totally. Like they can't even go. Like what got me through both of my postpartum periods was doing yoga nidra,
Mm,
because it's so balancing for your nervous system. I just loved it. It was so healing for me.
yeah.
But like me walking into the room to do a nidra, I was walking into the room with guilt. I
Yeah.
was. So like don't expect the guilt to not be there. It's okay that it's there. You're learning how to
That's great.
you're learning how to process the guilt.
And
Like
I love that. The other thing that I was thinking of too, when you were talking of going on this trip with your girlfriends, I think what's so profound about that is like you remember who you are. Like healing
mm,
can happen so much in connection. And when you were talking, I was like, I don't know, when I'm around my girlfriends, I'm like, oh, snap. Like this is who I am. And like I think one of my biggest fears going into parenthood and being a mother is losing myself in that experience. I've gotten so much coaching, so I'm like beyond
yeah,
this now, but like um I think being around other people and making space for that gives you time to not only like find that, create that, cultivate that, but also to like remember who you are.
that you every time you say it, it's so weird. You said who I am or who you are like three times. Has given me the chills because I mean, like it's so visceral. Like it's so important, and that was the sentiment. Like this whole weekend, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I'm more than like my kids and my partner." Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
so
so
good.
important.
I love that. Amazing. Thank you so much for talking about that. I also want to talk about emotional eating because you help people with weight loss. Is that okay? Are you open
Oh,
to? Okay.
no,
Yeah.
it's a secret. No,
It's a
yeah,
secret.
I will talk about literally. You don't know. You don't even want to know the things I'll talk about. Yeah, I'll talk about anything. Plus,
Open book.
I love talking about emotional eating.
This is great. This is great. So I want to pivot a little bit away from mom guilt. But I'm so glad. Thank you also for just talking about the mom stuff because I look to you as a beacon of like what motherhood, I want my motherhood journey to look like. So I had
Mm.
to say that.
Oh, that's so
Um,
nice.
but I also want to talk about emotional eating because that is kind of like your niche area of, helping people, lose weight for the last time. But you and I have talked about emotional eating before, like, just briefly, but this happens a lot in breakups and divorce. And I really see two different dynamics with food happening. It's like either someone is completely distraught and they can't consume food, like they're
Mm,
having a hard time eating, or it's like the other end of the spectrum where they're buffering with food and alcohol. Like
hmm
they're like, anytime an emotion comes up, we're going to feel better by eating or drinking alcohol. Um, and yeah, so I would love to
Yeah,
know, I would love to get your advice on emotional eating,
yeah,
any tips that you have around this. And then, of course, anything that might be like mom specific is also welcome. I know it's a
yeah.
broad question.
No, we can. Well, I'll just start talking, and then I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll just ask me more questions. Whatever. I could talk about emotional eating forever. So, first and foremost, I think it's like really important to call out that like eating for emotional reasons is not wrong or bad. Like it's really not. It's like I always tell my clients, I'm like, you're not doing heroin. Like, like you're having freaking goldfish to like soothe and comfort. It's okay. And the reason I really want to call that out is because it's so much easier to heal from eating for emotional reasons or emotional eating if you want to heal from it. Like you don't have to, right? Like you don't have to want to. But it's easier when you're like, oh, okay, this was actually kind of a decent coping mechanism. This actually wasn't the worst thing I could have been doing.
That
It's
is
actually,
so good, Laura. I just have to, yeah,
ah,
this is so good. It almost like takes off so much pressure.
yes, so much pressure and so much shame
Hmm.
because people are like closet eating or pantry eating or whatever. And it's like, this is actually like of all the things that you could pick, this is actually the best coping mechanism. And you just haven't been taught how to feel yet. And that's okay. No one is teaching us. Well, I guess me and Dorothy are out there teaching you guys, but like no one is teaching us how to feel and no one's teaching us how to think about our feelings. So no wonder. So that's like first and foremost. Like if you notice that you might be an emotional eater, it's not wrong or bad. The other thing I'll call out is like, I didn't know I was an emotional eater. So you might have a lot of listeners or clients that actually are eating for emotional reasons that don't know it. So I like to kind of give the test of if you're not hungry and you're eating, it's probably an emotional eat. Like if hunger isn't the problem, food isn't the solution. Again, not wrong or bad. Like I see my husband, I'm like, like he's on the couch. It's like 10:30 p.m. He's like housing a bag of chips. Like he's not hungry, but he's having the time of his life and he doesn't have any issues because he eats a bag of chips once every 3 weeks at 10:30 p.m., right? Like it doesn't hurt him. He doesn't wake up with a chip hangover. He has the health that he wants. So whatever. But for me, that doesn't work for me because I
A
wake up with a
chip
chip
hangover.
hangover. Like I wake up with a hangover from the chips. So that's one like kind of litmus test of like, okay, if I am not hungry, food isn't the solution. And it can really help you to become like best friends with yourself, or it can really help you to learn how to feel or to see like, hey, what's really going on for me? Like what actually are my needs here? So again, I didn't think I was an emotional eater because I wasn't eating a pint of ice cream every night at 9:30, followed by, a bag of peanut butter stuffed pretzels or whatever the thing was. I was like a little bored at 2:30, so I'd grab a hand of almonds, or like I didn't want to do the next like task on my list, so I would go grab an apple. Like, but it's healthy, you know? And that was whatever. Again, not wrong or bad. But
This
I
is
know,
so good, Laura. I
yeah.
don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm like, oh my God, I think some of me is emotional eating. Like half the time I'm like just uncomfortable in my body. So I'll just get up and go grab a snack instead of like
Yeah.
lie down
Again,
or
not
something.
wrong or bad. Again. And you can
So
also put it through that test of like, is it serving me? Like for my husband who eats emotionally sometimes, like it might be serving him. He might be a little stressed, have some chips, and it's a net neutral for him. It's not a net negative for him. But if I eat for emotional reasons, it's a net negative for me. So it's just like the question is like, does it serve me or not? No wrong, right, bad, whatever. Um, I would also eat for fun. Like I'd be at a party and I'd be like, oh, this party is like not that fun. Like I'll just eat another cupcake. That'll make it more fun, right? So a lot of us eat for celebration or because the party's not that fun. So we'll make it more fun by eating. Um, anyways, so if you do decide that you want, or like you're going through a breakup, right? There's a lot of eating for comfort, or like I deserve it, or like a reward, or whatever. And this is where I think there's such a cool opportunity because if you're noticing you're like pantry pacing, or like I used to just stand in front of the fridge with it just open and I would just like look around and like grab a stupid string cheese or whatever. Um, so if you're noticing that you're doing that, you can ask yourself like, oh, hey, what do I really need here? Like it's not in the fridge. Like what am I really looking for? And then you will probably hear an answer of like, I really need comfort, or I really need love, or I really need to be heard. And then you can be like, well, how could I take care of myself? Like how could I actually feed this need without using food? And then it becomes a really cool opportunity to get to know yourself and like what works, what's healing, like what is it that you need, and to be able to start to give that to yourself. So I actually love the emotional eating work because it's such a huge opportunity to like get to know yourself and then be able to have your own back. And that builds so much confidence because then you're like not afraid of your life because you're like, I can handle my life.
yes, and you're giving yourself all of the emotional stuff that you think is outside of you, which is just like an eye-opening moment for so many.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So And I also would say like if you are listening right now and you're like, "Ooh, maybe I am an emotional eater." Like I want this to be a practice for you, not a like, "Okay, now today I'm not going to be an emotional eater." It's like can you just live in the question of like maybe it's serving me, maybe it's not. Like let me just explore and like maybe I do eat emotionally tonight. And maybe I just look at why without any shame and just like get to know myself through that lens. Like you're not going
And
to
see if it
decide.
served you or not.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
did it
And if
work
it
or did it not?
didn't,
Mhm.
and if it didn't, you don't have to, there doesn't need to be any shame either. Like I teach this practice called looking back with love, and it's all about like, hey, what happened there? Like, what was going on for me? Right? It's like, I'm like to my clients, I'm always like, you're either winning or learning. It's just not eating for emotional reasons or losing weight for the last time. It's just a skill that we haven't been taught. Just like riding a bike. Like, my kid is learning how to ride a bike right now. He falls. He's like, why did I fall? I'm like, well, you were like looking at the random bird and you went off on the curb. Like, don't do that next time. And he's like, oh, okay, great. I won't do that next time. He's not like, wow, I'm a stupid idiot. Like, what's wrong? Something must be wrong with me because we do that with the emotional eating. We're like, well, something must actually be wrong with me. No, nothing is wrong with you. You've literally been taught to eat for emotional reasons. I see this with my kids. I notice how I want to, even though I teach this as a coach, I will want to distract or help them escape their emotions with food. I'm like, want a popsicle? And I'm like, shit, Laura, don't say that. Like, let's go help them feel their emotions.
That's hilarious. I never even thought about that. I'm like excited to see how that goes, but I can totally see myself like accidentally doing that, being like,
100%.
You're upset? Like, totally. Let's get a popsicle. Let's go get ice cream." Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like that's why you're not bad or wrong for wanting to use food for what it's not for, but you want to use it for comfort or rewards or stress relief or what love, whatever. And it's just because that's what you've been taught, or like it's everywhere in our culture. You had a bad day, let me pick you up. We'll go grab a glass of wine. Oh my God, your boss was an a-hole. Let's go for ice cream.
That's really fascinating to think about all of the coping mechanisms that we have built up just in life that create so much shame. I don't know. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
starting to like realize that as you were talking through that of
Yeah.
like emotional eating. But I even think about some of my clients who like stay in unhealthy relationships for a long time. I don't know, like we bring on this identity that then creates a lot of shame instead of just being like, oh, we're either winning or learning. But
Mm.
instead we make it mean these like very like grandiose, dramatic things. Like, I'm not someone who stands in my boundaries, or I'm not someone who has standards, or I have lost all my own self-respect because I'm staying in this thing
Yeah.
instead of just being like, no, I'm either like learning, or you said I'm winning or learning. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
And learning is also winning. Like the
yeah,
only loss, the only like way to lose is like throwing your head in the sand
yeah. Hmm.
or beating the crap out of yourself. And it's like, I mean, we have a joke at my house. It's like, I'm still like, I made a mistake. Like, oh, I made a mistake last night, actually. I, oof, this is embarrassing. So I like, my daughter has something going on with her nose, and I like picked at it, and she got so mad, and she was like, Mom, this is my body, and I didn't want you to do that. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, you're right. Like, I felt a lot of shame kind of wash over me because she was right. Like, she was like, Mom, no. And I kind of still did it. And she was like, that was my body. That wasn't okay. I was so proud of her for
Yeah,
speaking
really.
up. But like, oof, I felt the shame and guilt kind of wash over me. And, um, and the willingness to like really just look at it without making it mean I'm a bad mom. Right.
Mm.
Like I just made a mistake. And then, so the joke at our house is like, oh, like I guess I'm still learning. Like I said to my husband, like later on in that night, because he was like, Luna was right. And I was like, I know. I'm like, I'm like, I'm still learning. And he's like, you're still learning. And like that's sort of this jokey voice that we do in our house that really kind of de-shames it, even if the shame is still there, because of course the programming and the grooves run deep. But I really think that can help. And even my kids now too, it's like, oh, well, you're just still learning. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna be
Oh,
learning forever.
that's so good. I love that. I love
Oh
that so
my.
much. We're totally going to implement that here over at the Wilson household.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm still learning. Damn it. I didn't want to be still learning. I wanted to have this down.
Like, I wanted to be a perfect mom before
Yeah.
by this point. Like,
Yeah. I'm like, shit.
so
Uh,
good. I'm so proud of Luna too for speaking up. Like I mean, how old is she?
she just turned 7. Yeah.
Amazing. Hopefully she
I
doesn't
know.
lose that, like keep that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully her mom doesn't beat it out of her. No, no.
Take it off of her.
Uh,
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Any words of wisdom about mom guilt, about emotional eating, about heartbreaks, breakup, anything that you can think of?
I mean, I think kind of the summary or like to kind of wrap this episode up in a pretty bow, it seems like what's coming up is if there's any way to release some of the shame or the guilt, it's like, oh, I'm still learning, or like, oh,
Mhm.
I feel guilty or ashamed. It's like, can we detach the behavior? Or like maybe you do make a mistake, like I did last night, right? Like maybe you do make a mistake. Can you not make it mean something about you? Can you just make it mean that like you're a human and you just are still learning versus like you're supposed to be perfect? It's like,
Remove the identity from it. Like stop making
yes,
identities out of mistakes and
yes.
learning experiences.
So well said. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Amazing. Laura, thank you so much for coming on. I know the Bravehearts are going to absolutely love you and be obsessed with you. Where can they find you? What do you have going on? Tell us how they can get in
Yeah.
touch with you.
Yeah, of course. So you guys are obviously podcast listeners. So I have a podcast too called How to Lose Weight for the Last Time with Laura Conley. So you could check that out. I'm on Instagram at Laura Conley Coaching. My name is Laura and my last name is Conley. And then I did give you guys, I have a little gift for them, which if you're interested in losing weight, it's what I would have wanted so badly when I felt desperate and in my dieting days, which is how to create your perfect weight loss plan. And it's just well, we usually charge for it, but for your audience, it's free. So that's just at plan.lauraconley.com. And I can give you all that too. So you can
Perfect.
throw it in the show notes
Well,
if you want.
yeah, we'll link it all in the show notes, everyone, so it's easy to click and get to.
Yeah, cool.
Perfect. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you, Boo.
Oh, this is so fun. So fun.
Yeah. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.